Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Truth Wanted. I'm your host, ObjectivelyDan, and this is the live call-in show where we talk about what people believe and why. Friday nights at 7 p.m. Central. This is December 18th, 2020. It is the last live Truth Wanted of 2020. So get your calls in tonight, folks. This is it. This is the last time you can talk to me on air as the year before the year goes by. Every week I have a special guest, and this week's guest is super special. This is Lauren, aka SkepticShe. Lauren, welcome to the show.
How's it going?
Going great. Super excited that you got to be on the last place here. We had actually messaged about you being on earlier this year, and this was back in the summer. And so, like, I'm glad we finally got you back on Truth Wanted. And yeah, Lauren is really cool. She makes videos on YouTube about atheism and Christianity and Scientology and a bunch of other stuff. And we were actually just talking before the show about your most recent project, and I was hoping you could talk a bit about that as well.
Yeah, so one kind of more for funsies thing that I do is I read through some Scientology magazines that I got on accident at my old apartment because there was a former or current Scientologist who didn't change their address, so that's fun. But the bigger thing that I've been working on is going through some old high school papers from a class I had called Christian Ethics. And as you can imagine, it's pretty entertaining and embarrassing and fun to share. The most recent one, in fact, the first one I did in what's going to be a series is on abortion. And I had some pretty horrendous arguments in there when I was 17 and writing this paper. So definitely check that out if you're interested.
Yeah, this kind of started us on this conversation, which I want to bring back and talk about again for the viewers about like the shift in ethics that we had, because like Christianity to me was more than just like a series of propositions that you believed in. Like it was like an ethical system. Like it was implied that you needed to follow these rules for one reason or another because Jesus. I mean, there's a lot of different like theological explanations why, but the point is like you had to do some of these things, and like other churches that didn't follow these rules weren't like the right churches. These were like, you know, this was stuff that like the narratives that I grew up around, and like we were talking about this idea of like what changed in us when we became atheists, because I mean, it obviously like it's a confluence of events that happened in our lives, I think, that changed our political leanings and our religious beliefs and our ethical beliefs, but like that was all kind of a package deal. And I'm wondering like how someone's ethics really changes like that after a religious belief switch. And I was curious about your insights from what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, so this is at least how it happened for me is, you know, in going through the process of deconverting, I was asking myself questions about, you know, pretty much everything I held dear and my identity. I was already in that mindset of asking all those questions and putting everything under a microscope. And so as soon as I deconverted from Christianity, that led to this chain reaction of me questioning everything else. You know, I used to be super politically conservative as well, and that pretty much was immediately dismantled. And Dan, I was telling you before that like, I think oftentimes, if not all the time, if we're really serious about our faith, it gets pretty heavily intertwined with our political beliefs.
Yeah.
So, and for me, unfortunately, that was on the conservative side.
Right. For me as well.
You know, there's different interpretations, of course. But yeah, so as soon as that got dismantled, my Christianity got dismantled, I was like, wait a second, being queer doesn't seem to be wrong, except for the fact that I was told it was wrong when I believed all of this. So now I don't have to believe that anymore. And, you know, it was this whole string of things. And obviously it's a good thing, but it was terrifying at the time, but I'm glad that I got out of that. And yeah, your ethics in pretty much every area change when you deconvert, in my opinion, if you were serious about it.
Yeah, it's just so bizarre because I don't know. It's a chicken and the egg situation for me. I don't know what really came first. Like, I think I started to shift politically first before I switched religious beliefs, but honestly, it's hard to tell. I mean, they were kind of both happening at the same time. I definitely became more aware of my upbringing once I got to college, going from Waco, Texas to like a different kind of town and meeting all kinds of different people with different experiences and different interpretations of allegedly the same religion that I had. Which was, you know, kind of fascinating to see, because when you encounter these different narratives of who you're supposed to be as a Christian, you have to wonder, well, how do you know which one is true and what method do you use? Of course, like most Christians will say, well, you got to look at the Bible. But hey, like that hasn't stopped people from like murdering each other over different interpretations, right? Like it's not always super clear and set in stone. So yeah, I'm sure you had a similar thing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I always say there's as many different interpretations of the Bible as there are people who read the Bible.
Yeah.
We've all made it whatever we want it to be, with our own kind of preconceived notions and biases. But yeah, with what you were saying about your political beliefs shifting first, I was telling you about how I had a couple of roommates who were a lot more progressive than me, but they were still Christian. And kind of like decided to experiment with being atheists because they didn't agree with what the church was teaching them about human rights and all of that. So there's a whole number of different paths that can take. And, you know, like I said to you before, I don't think that's a good reason to call yourself an atheist. You can still believe in God and be mad at God.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so many different ways to get there.
Yeah, I remember feeling like the odd duck out because I never had a problem with evolution growing up. That was kind of
me neither.
Yeah, I before I even really understood what evolution was, I didn't really have a grasp of it until high school, but I didn't have like a problem with it in concept or in theory. It just kind of made sense. And I was also, you know, fairly pro-choice. It wasn't something I really thought about until, you know, more recent years, but like I wasn't against it either. I never was compelled to be like, oh, these people are murdering innocent babies or anything. That wasn't like a narrative I really grew up around. But like I definitely encountered in my teenage and college years other people who felt more strongly about that stuff, mostly against that stuff. Because when I got to college, I actually ended up joining an evangelical ministry, and people from, you know, those kinds of backgrounds don't really like those things. So it kind of made me think about it more, I guess, the fact that these people were in opposition to it, and I just as a base kind of wasn't. But I was opposed to other things like you. I was uncomfortable with the LGBT community. I did like that was just a separate thing from my experience because I grew up as like a straight normal white. I say normal. I like an average American straight white kid experience. You know, like I was pretty typical in that sense, I guess. And I didn't realize what accepting those narratives meant about my relationship with other people and with the queer community as a whole. I didn't realize that even just being passive about it, even if I wasn't like with a sign on the street, you know, actively saying against it, was still causing harm just by being part of that system, you know?
Right.
So
absolutely.
yeah. I'm talking a lot there, but point is, we changed. Somehow we changed. And if you folks think that you guys can change us back, if you want to make us Christians, or if you want to ask us about something else, this is Truth Wanted, folks. This is the live call-in show where we want to take your calls. We have a lot of open lines right now, so please call in so that we can talk to you guys. Those of you just joining again, I'm talking to Lauren SkepticShe, who makes great content on YouTube. And you talk about Scientology, which I don't see a lot of other atheist YouTubers talk about. And I'm curious what made you start talking about that.
Yeah. So like I said, at my old apartment, I just got a bunch of Scientology magazines on accident. And before, I wish I hadn't done this, but you know, the first year or so of me getting them, I would just throw them away. And then I was like, wait a second, I have a YouTube channel now that I'm pretty active on. I'm sure there's some stuff in here that's pretty hilarious and absurd. And so I read through it and I was like, yep, this is worth talking about. And then also I became a lot more interested in it when I started watching Leah Remini's documentary. Have you seen it?
Yes, I have.
Scientology and Aftermath. Yeah, it's so good. But when I heard just how horrible it was, I'm like, all right, well, I'll add my voice of, you know, I'll be one of the suppressive persons on the internet. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think what strikes me the most about Scientology, what I didn't realize, was just the history of L. Ron Hubbard himself. I think L. Ron Hubbard might be the most successful con man that history has ever known. Honestly, that man just got away with so much stuff. It is unbelievable, the stuff that he got away with over the course of his lifetime. But it like, I only know that because I know how to research that kind of thing. And I think that's what happens with people who get into Scientology, is they don't have, they may not know how to access those resources or really think about some of the questions that you and I might think about when they, you know, talk to people. There's a Scientology building downtown here in Austin that I haven't been into, but my brother has actually. He told me stories about how they did the whole, what do they call it? The testing on him, you know, and it sounded just really bizarre. So I don't know. Very, very strange stuff.
Yeah, and it's scary because even if you, I mean, I'm not going to go into too much detail on this, but like, even if you just take one of their like personality tests or just walk in their building, as soon as they have any real information about you, like if they have your first and last name or your address, phone number, whatever, they will hound you like crazy. At least that's what I've heard. So yeah, it's not something to mess around with. Not
a great organization to be a part of, for sure. Yeah, not good for anybody, honestly. Like, at least if you're a part of a church, sometimes you do like local charity work or something. Like, I don't even think, do Scientologists even do that? Do you know?
They claim that they do. They talk a lot about it in the magazines that I read on my channel, but they take credit for things that they have no business taking credit for. They're like, oh, we helped a bunch of people of color in a different country by handing out pamphlets.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's great. The best thing you can do for people in need is give them a pamphlet. Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Waste some paper and you've solved everything.
That's it. They just need to hear. I was complaining because I put this on Twitter. There's a guy here in Austin that in the middle of the day goes over to I-35 underneath the bridge with a bullhorn and like preaches at the people struggling with homelessness underneath the bridge there. And I saw this happen one day, and I talked to a guy next to me, and I asked that was at a store I was at, and it was like, is he here all the time? He's like, yes, he's here like every other weekday, like just at around the same time, and goes out there and does this. And what an absolute, what a first of all, trashy thing to do, just straight up trashy thing to do. But also like we have a resurgence in people struggling with homelessness in the city right now because of the crisis. And it's like, you are doing the least amount of help possible right now. Like, not only are you like, it's one thing to actively ignore people. It's another thing to shove your ideology right in their face, right in front of their living space. Like, I cannot imagine a worse thing to do to them besides actively antagonizing them, like physically or something. Like, it's so frustrating. But I don't know if you have
any. And like any other cult, they take advantage of the most vulnerable people. Like, I just learned that they basically recruit prisoners, which is awful. Like, they'll teach Scientology classes in some prisons. I don't know how they get away with it. And then people will get out of prison and end up sucked into Scientology. And it's like, if you leave, you know, they have the, I forget what it's called. It's like a no holds barred policy. Someone tell me what it is. I'm forgetting. But basically, they can use your criminal record and everything against you if you try to leave Scientology or speak out against Scientology. So that's
how you know you have the truth, when people are trying to suppress you from talking about it. Of course, like talking about your experiences, right? That's a surefire way of knowing. But yeah, no, it's oh gosh, it's awful. It's awful. They're a cult, straight up. Scientologists come at us. I don't care. I would love to talk to a Scientologist. That would make the last show of the year really something memorable. I don't think I've ever, outside of that particular building in Austin. I don't think I've really talked to any before. Do you have any messages from people that talk to you about it since you have started making videos about them?
Like people in Scientology?
Yeah, or just like related to Scientology in any way? Like,
no, but I do have a lot of ex-Scientologists who talk to me because so I got super lucky because somehow, some way, someone on a pretty popular ex-Scientologist board shared one of my videos a while back, and then Mike Rinder shared it. Which is
really
amazing.
wow.
Yeah. So now Mike Rinder knows who I am. I've sent him a couple of messages and stuff, and so that's super cool. So that's how I got like a bunch of ex-Scientologists to come watch, and then they'll teach me some other things. Like if I say I'm not sure about something that I'm reading in like one of the magazines, they'll be like, you wouldn't believe it's a lot worse than you think it is, Lauren, and you haven't been in it and it's a lot worse than you think. And I'm like, yep, I believe it.
Oh my gosh, there is a I got a message from someone here on the crew, speaking of Mike Render, because the policy you're talking about is fair game policy. And he's doing that podcast right now called Scientology Fair Game. And just a little excerpt of it here is, in 1967, the policy titled Penalties for Lower Conditions, Hubbard wrote that opponents who are fair game may be deprived of property or injured by any means by any Scientologist without any discipline of the Scientologist, may be tricked, sued, or lied to, or destroyed.
Yeah, and that's actually what Mike Rinder used to do. I'm sure you saw him talk all about that.
Yeah.
But it's
like
it's terrifying.
Because you already want to leave. You already don't think any of this is real, or you feel like your life is threatened, and then they're actively threatening and antagonizing you. I cannot imagine if I left the church, what the people I already got a lot of hate messages and people who were not as kind to me when I came out about this stuff. But like, that's just a whole other level. Like, I've never felt like my life was threatened. That I can't imagine.
Right. And they'll even make stuff up about you too. Like they'll call your boss and say that you did X, Y, and Z and get you fired, and you can't prove them wrong really. And they're protected because their religion, quote unquote. It's really bad. And people have warned me, they're like, maybe you should not make videos making fun of Scientology because they can come after you with fair game. But I'm like, I have very little reach. I was never actually a Scientologist, so I don't think I'm much of a threat to them, but I'll keep an eye on it.
I also don't think people realize like how easily it is to get into Scientology, because I think people just hear stuff about it and they don't like. I think people have this idea that it's all rich celebrities and stuff, but from my understanding of it, is that's just not the case for the vast majority. I mean, obviously they do have those sort of upper class people investing into it, but like I saw a documentary earlier this year about kid stars like in Hollywood and stuff. And the mom had mentioned like, yeah, I just got this book recently about Scientology because I heard Tom Cruise was into it and I wanted my kid to be successful, and do what they were doing. And like, it's that simple for some people to get into stuff like that,
Yeah, and I've talked about this too, where they disguise a lot of their program names, or they'll like go get representation and don't tell like the building or church or whatever where they're presenting that they're part of Scientology. They'll just sneak it in there. So they're really good at like making themselves sound really powerful and awesome, or like they're like corporate business leaders or something. And that's how people get sucked in. Just like an MLM, honestly.
Exactly. I mean, it's like Scientology has a really fascinating history too. Again, especially looking at L. Ron Hubbard. But if you want to look more into that, check out Lauren's channel. She's talked about it quite a bit, and I want to get to calls here in just a second, but we want to again announce the special thing that we're doing this next week for Christmas Day, because next Friday is Christmas Day. We will not be doing a live show, which is why this is going to be the last live show of the year, but we're not doing nothing. We got something here. Some of you guys watched last week know, but we're going to go ahead and play the clip again just so you know what we're talking about. And here we go. That's right, folks. For those of you who are listening to the podcast, you missed that clip, but the Golden Pico Awards are happening next week. The voting for that ends in 2 days on the 20th. But yes, we're doing some of the best and worst calls of the year, some of the best guests of the year. We've got a bunch of different categories, and it's all decided by you guys for voting into the show. So if you want to vote and you haven't done it yet, look for the link for that in the description. It's going to be tiny.cc/thegoldenpicos. We've already filmed most of some of the MC kind of content and stuff, and it's so fun, guys. This is one of the funnest things we've done in a while. I'm really looking forward to having that released to you guys on Christmas Day. So that is my Christmas gift to you. Not just mine, but everybody who is on the crew. Pretty much everybody that has ever done anything for Truth Wanted. Everybody is pitching in something for this. So it's going to be really awesome. So please check that out when you guys are ready. And now, before we get to calls, I have to thank the patron of the week. Every single week, there is a special patron that gets shouted out. And this patron's name is Anthony Magnabosco, you sly dog. Yeah, Anthony's actually been a patron of the show almost since its inception, ever since like we had a Patreon for it. So Anthony, you got the shout out this week. Thank you so much for donating. And if you would like to donate and make this show awesome, you can do that by going to patreon.com/truthwanted. The money for that helps get equipment and all kinds of other stuff that goes into running a show like this. So thank you guys for all that donate. So with all that out of the way, yeah, Anthony's awesome. He's the best.
Love him. Yep.
Are you ready to take some calls, Lauren?
I am ready. Let's do it.
Cool.